Part of life. Original Barman along with the two bad, wicked youths of rap. Not a mercy, whoa.
What's the business? Talk paper when I'm riding by. They know it's drizzle, eat the truth off the east side. I know who ain't got my money because they ducking high. I grind for me and mine. I got the green light. I got to get it how I live it. That means front line. I got them zips, I got that soft, I got that hard white.
That's right. We're back with another stream dujame. If you are new to this channel, please. Seat is so noisy. If you're new to this channel, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Every comment means a lot to me, and it can help move this channel in the right direction. Which is why I have the new Citibank right direction card. All right. Jeem in his Read Rome. Rick Perry says yes. But Jeem, the mustard seed parable works really well for the futurist crowd, because most of them are obscenely overweight. So the mustard goes with their brat. Always down for a pot roast on futurism, says Sir Nicholas. Batman Beyond, more like Land Down Under Bat, says, everyone like the stream, regime will send the Lebanese mafia to poison your dinner tonight. All they would have to do is overseason the food. What's up? Not a lot. Jeem, the Yahoods sent me a mail to register for their political party. It's funny, Jay's doing a stream debating guy. Yeah, I know. That's why originally the stream was going to be debunking Zionism, but I think Jay already did that. So I don't need to debunk Zionism per se. I'm just going to debunk futurism, which, you know, we've already kind of done before, but this will be the master class, the gold standard, the mold standard. GMG9 Uzi says, yo, Gene, what are your thoughts on pews in Orthodox Church in the West? I don't think it makes much sense. I don't think it's detrimental to liturgy per se. I just don't think it makes much sense. You should have called Orthodox Luigi as a guest. I don't have a lot of guests on here. It's like the same 3 people call in. No offense. Donate to feed the starving Lebanon child. Wait, where was that? I didn't even see that on the, there it is. Well, thank you very much. I think I'll use that $1.99 USD to purchase a Diet Coke. Jay was on Live T and tonight discussing partial preterism with Sovereign Bra. Yeah, I'm not going to be discussing partial preterism. So, actually, you know what, Chance Rice? It's a good thing, because most people don't watch 2 hours of a stream all in a row. So this way you can watch my stream, and if it gets boring or repetitive, go to Jay's stream or Jim Bob's stream or IP's stream. I always find it funny to say IP's stream, like a stream of you know what, of Pete. I don't even no point in saying you know what. I generally don't understand how people can hold the position without being embarrassed. Well, let's get John Hagee. May Netanyahu be pleased with him up here. And all memes aside, right? We have a few things to cover. Let me see. Yeah, there's a few things to take a look at. So I'm just getting everything ready right now. Feel free to swap around on chats. If you are here, I will open up the stream later. So That means that, when it's time to actually include you guys in the stream, I will do that, but it's just not going to happen right at this instant. I'm trying to see if a friend of mine will pop in. He may not. I did a yeah, we're gonna see if a friend of mine can pop in here. Anyway, so let's read a couple more chats, and then we're gonna get into it. After attack, Diet Pepsi. Well, I don't see the difference in the Coke versus Pepsi jihad. I don't think is that important. Jim, do you think Western thought from Akin ruined the possibility for Iceland to have an army, Armenia, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg to have an army? Why not us? I don't know if you could link Aquinas all the way to whether or not you guys have a standing army. There are plenty of people in the Orthodox tradition that lean toward not doing warfare. I just bring up the ones who do, because the people who argue that you have to be pacifist to be Orthodox are just kind of stupid, and so I have to go after that. Not saying you must declare war, but you can. Kai, I don't know, Kai, you look kind of like this other dude I've seen on the internet before. He says, I have a Baptist church near me that believes in trail of blood and Christian Zionism. Well, I mean, an Orthodox counter to delay Perusia. What's the question exactly? Thank you for the super chat. Feel free to ask again. You don't have to do a super chat every time you ask a question, but I do appreciate it. All right, so we got Mr. Hagee here, Rub Hagee, the master, the gold standard, the greatest of all time. We're going to describe, Zionism and stuff a little bit too. Obviously, I'll be able to give my component on Zionism, given that I'm the son of Lebanese immigrants, well, Lebanese and Egyptian immigrants. But we're not just going to talk about the Jews. So if you came here to talk about the Jews, you're going to have a bad time. We're not just talking. So in fact, this is primarily the fault of the Gentiles. Like, this is primarily non-Jews have done this garbage. Everybody thinks the Jews tricked people into doing future. That's not true at all. It's not a Jewish thing. Jews will take advantage. Trust me. They will definitely take advantage of the wallet from Argentina. No, it's not. I think it's from Chile. Anyway, they will take advantage, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they invented it. If I found money on the ground, I would probably take it. But that doesn't mean I'm responsible for putting the money there, am I? No. So the Yehudai did not. Gene, if you kiss the wall. What's that supposed to mean? Some say the only way the Jews would be safe from persecution is that they needed their own state to protect themselves. This is not a discussion on whether or not Jews need a state. And again, I find that to be a little preposterous, because there's a lot of people who don't have a state and they're not in total destruction. So there's a difference between, should Jews live in this land peacefully? Yes. There's a difference between that and, now they need their own ethno-state. So there's a difference. Anyway, is there a possibility that there will be a non-Greek Jerusalem church pretty much just for the Arab? Well, the thing is, the Antiochian church, even though it's under the jurisdiction of the Greek church, it's pretty much all Syrians and Lebanese who minister it. So it's about as Arab as you're going to get. For Jerusalem, that's more directly tied to the Greek churches. So St. Catherine's Monastery is basically its own church at that point. You have Palestine and whatever. So, they all are part of the Jerusalem Rite. I don't know if they would get their own thing. They already have the Jerusalem Rite. This stuff is so mainstream. It's not a conspiracy. I was on a sports live stream the other day. Some guy came in just talking about the Jews. Yeah, this stuff is ridiculous. This stuff's ridiculous. All right, so anyway, let's get into it. I've had just about enough of the goofing. This is Yahya bin Hagee, the great prophet of futurism. And he basically, I'm going to just use as the poster child for American Evangelical Christianity. American USA map Christian sects. That's how you're supposed to Google, by the way. Any of you use complete sentence when you Google, you're a girl. Because that's how my girlfriend, she's like, oh, hello, Google. How was your day? I'd like to ask you a question. Can you tell me exactly where I can find oranges? Oh, wait a minute. Not oranges, tangerines. It's like, you're just supposed to put in word salad and then Google will give you what you want. Does not need something. I hate these maps that are like the Protestant church. Like, what is that even supposed to mean? The Protestant church. TM. The Protestant church. Copyright. Patent pending, the Protestant church. All right, so here we go. This is it. If we take a look at this map here, you can see that the lion's share of Protestants in this country are of a Baptist persuasion. I don't consider the Church of Latter-day Saints to be Christianity, really. It's kind of a cultic offshoot of evangelicalism. It's a little weird. It's not really Christianity, to be honest with you. That's it. That's all I'm going to say on that. The next largest of the Protestant denominations, of course, Baptist includes of an evangelical variety. So the vast majority of Baptists in the United States are of an evangelical variety. They're not going to be Reformed Baptists like James White. Okay, James White, Jacob White, is not Jacobus White is not the average Baptist. He's basically a Calvinist of the Baptist persuasion, whereas these are evangelicals of a Baptist persuasion. As you can see, they're the vast majority of the Deep South. Now, Catholicism is just the largest denomination in all the blue areas. It doesn't mean that they are the majority. It just means that Protestantism split between so many parties that the next largest one would be Catholicism. That's why I don't like these maps that much. So again, Gene does not endorse this map here. Gene is just showing you that the Baptist Church holds sway over the Deep South. That includes other evangelicals. And then in terms of mainline, the only mainline I see on here would be the Methodist, the Reformed, the Lutheran. That's it. So the Methodists are pretty big in the Midwest leading up into upstate New York area. The Reformed, it looks extremely tiny, but they do actually have a presence in America. They're just not the majority anywhere, really. And Lutherans, obviously, being the Scandinavian areas in the north of the country. Let me just read this amazing super chat. Thank you so much for Sincere Hypocrite. 10 Australian, what's the U stand for? 10 Australian underdollars, because of the land down under. Israel versus Islam is a false dichotomy, considering secular Muslim leaders get overthrown by America, while radical Islam is on the rise. Baptized Coptic, but now a catechumen in EO. Well, thank you very much for that super chat, Mr. Hypocrite. I definitely appreciate that. But anyway, I don't agree that they're less than 2%, but real Protestantism is not that big anymore. So anyway, the denomination, I've showed you this map already. I'm going to go back to Hagee. So with Hagee, his whole shtick is that Gog and Magog, all right? Gog and Magog. I had the map pulled up, so I'm not being unprofessional. I literally had this stuff here. For some reason, someone put Kazakhstan as Gog and Magog. Like, did they not understand? This is a little better. This is an older map, so I don't just want, Pastor Hick. I want the actual stuff. Magog, Gomer, Meshech, and Tubal, and Togar Mana. Basically, they think that these are end-time prophecies. So concerning the book of Ezekiel, the book of Daniel, some elements of Isaiah, they think that per the Old Testament and the Apocalypse of St. John, so that is the book of Revelation, that the events of warfare and other end times prophecies will take place in the modern nation state of Israel. I kid you not. Okay, so they actually think that the modern nation state of Israel has to do with the Bible. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not just going to mock. Okay, like, it's very easy to mock. It's very easy to mock. And it's very easy to make fun and be, oh, yeah, this is all rat shit. This is so stupid. What kind of idiot could believe in futurism? Well, when I was first getting into Christianity, I believed it, right? I didn't know there were other options. There's not going to be a video just about where I came from and all this stuff in terms of theology, but I did start on kind of a non-denominational belief system. Like, I didn't know I was, but it kind of was. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know I was even selecting a denomination. I believe this stuff because I'm like, oh, why wouldn't the Bible be talking about all these wars happening right here and now? And to be fair, a lot of people don't really think about it. It's like Baptist evangelicals are not, is there a different eschatological science I should be persuaded into? How may I assess empirically the result of this prophecy. Like, they don't know any of that. They genuinely just think that Jesus gave the Bible to a church at the beginning. The church got corrupted by the papists, and then, somehow we found our way back to purity with the evangelical / Baptist congregations, and through that, Jesus is telling everybody, here's all these wars that are going to happen. Combine that with the fact that America is so far removed, and so is sub-Saharan Africa, from the Middle East. So all the countries that are like near the Middle East and are Christian majority or plurality, they don't believe in futurism. Countries in Europe don't believe in it because, like, they know Israel's right there. Like, they see this stuff all the time. It's not a faraway land of Fantasia. You guys understand? Okay, that's a faraway land of Fantasia. They don't know that. They don't believe in that because they know that Palestine's right there. It's right next to them. It's not that mystical. But America's thousands of miles away, and most Americans are honestly a little clueless when it comes to Middle Eastern culture and politics, and that's fine. They don't need to know any of that stuff. But when it bleeds into religion, then we have a problem here. Then we got a problem here. Okay, so Gog, Magog, Turkey, Israel, Russia, it's all stupid. Like, this stuff makes no sense whatsoever. Borat is linked to Gog and Magog. Yeah, it's Kazakhstan. So I do want to bring up two people. There's a few followers of my vlog here who do know the people I'm going to bring up. One of them is Francisco Ribera. He was a Jesuit. We're just going to read out to the class here. In the context of interpreting eschatological writings, futurism is the position that the apocalypse refers not primarily to the ancient context which it was written, it's preterism or partial preterism, or to events that have already passed, that's historicism, but rather predicts future events in a period immediately prior to the second coming. The Dictionary of Premillennial Theology states that Ribera was an Augustinian amillennialist whose form of futurism proposed that only the introductory chapters of Revelation referred to ancient Rome, and the remainder referred to a literal 3.5 years at the end of time. His interpretation was then followed by Robert Bellarmine, Spanish Dominican. So basically, he is one of the first futurists, all right, Francisco Ribera. Now, he's not 100% futurist because he thinks the first 3 chapters of the apocalypse or so do refer to the ancient time period. So, like, on some chapters, he's a preterist. On other chapters, he's a futurist. Let's go again. Who's this guy? Who's this boy? Who's this boy? All right. This is Manuel Lacunza. Okay. Lacunza's ideas and their subsequent effect on the development of Protestant eschatology after the Reformation. According to historicism, well, we've already discovered historicism a million times, but Manuel Lacunza also deals with the idea of futurism. I'm just showing you the page so you guys can go here and read it yourself. I don't just want to read out stuff all by myself, okay? But the point is that when you look at any of these things, go back to this tab, you see that the futurist stuff comes about during the great period of the Reformation, and after that, the Counter-Reformation. So the Lutherans, the Methodists, etc., the Calvinists / Reformed, they didn't care about futurism. All of them were following what E.B. Eliot puts concisely in his collection of tomes called Horae Apocalypticae. All right, in E.B. Eliot, Edward Bishop Eliot's Horae Apocalypticae, he goes chapter by chapter in the book of Revelation, showing that in the Protestant view of historicism, which all the old Protestant churches actually held to, the Pope of Rome, meaning the seat or the office of the papacy, not like, oh, it's Pope Francis or something, it's John Paul II. No, it's none of those guys. They didn't believe like what Seat of Acontis believed. They just thought the papacy project, the position, the presidential office of the papacy is the Antichrist religion. So the Antichrist is like a figure, but it's more like a status. And then it's also religion. And that's what they thought. That's what Edward Bishop Eliot taught. Now, that is clearly starkly different to what we see in futurism, where there is no mention of the Catholic Church, no mention of Jesuits, no mention of wars throughout history, no mention of different times, no mention of theology. It has nothing to do with theology. You guys ever notice this Gog and Magog futurism stuff has nothing to do with religious belief? It's all just politics. Like, Israel will get invaded or Israel won't get invaded. Russia is going to invade Israel. I don't know why that would be the case, like old Soviet boomer propaganda. Who knows? Kazakhstan is going to invade Israel, and then the Turks get involved. But why? Like, we're not even covering religious belief. It's as if Islam is an afterthought. Like, oh, who cares about Islam? It's not an important part. So I always found that completely bizarre that they just don't care about theology. Like, they don't care. Oh, the Muslims are attacking Israel. Why? Why are they doing that? Why might they believe that land is for them? Okay. The Turks, they're Muslim. Why? What do they even have to do with Russia at this point? So that's one of the main issues with futurism, is that none of the Protestants actually believed in it. None of the people who caused the Reformation believed in it. Now, you're going to run into some Baptists who say, we're not Protestants, we hate Protestantism, Protestantism is wrath shit, all the reformers are wrath shit. But the point is that whether they like it or not, they're a result of there being a break of the apostolic churches. So they don't even follow the apostolic churches they so claim. Yet they take all their theology from a pair of mystic Jesuits. Can you believe that? Can you believe saying, yeah, the Protestants suck because they're too Catholic, so we're better than the Protestants. We don't care about the Protestants. We also hate Catholicism because it has nothing to do with our glorious Baptist religion, but we get our eschatology from Catholic Jesuit mystics. It's pretty hilarious. Now, someone might say, well, who cares about John Calvin? Who cares about Protestantism, James? We didn't come here for this Protestantism nonsense. Well, the Eastern Orthodox Church also holds to historicism, although it's a minority position. So the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church traditionally hold to partial preterism. Again, distinct from any idea of futurism. To let you guys know, in the grand timeline of things, how recent futurism is, it shows up in like the mid-17 to early 1800s. So for the first 1800 years of Christianity, nobody believed it. End of story. That's it. Historicism became more popular during the Reformation, but it was actually around before that as well. So neo-historicism is just a revival of the historicist methodology, but from the Greek version of eschatology. So it's about Orthodox Christians basically saying, well, the Protestants have a good idea here, but their interpretations are wrong because, they would obviously pin that on the Orthodox as well. They say the Pope of Rome is a big evil, but the Orthodox also get judged. So the Orthodox would say, well, we're going to tweak it a little bit, and clearly we can't interpret it the exact way the Protestants do, so we have a variety of different sources, and actually there are a lot of people here, okay? Exegetical movement, as you can see. You can check out this website for yourself. What is it? What are some classic historicist books, etc., etc.? You're going to see Horae Apocalypticae. So this is all Protestantism here, right? So the Orthodox, they're admitting, yeah, there's a link there because they both have a common disagreement. And that's why, I don't really buy it so much when people online say, hey guys, it's the apostolics versus the evil evangelicals. When in history, that's not how it was. The Orthodox didn't really like the Catholic Church. Okay, they saw the lay people as maybe their brethren, but they didn't like the papacy. They didn't like political Catholicism. They had a major problem with it. It's like this idea that it's the apostolic church versus the evil, rotten evangelicals. Like, that's a false dichotomy simply because we live in America, and Baptists and evangelicals are the cream of the crop. Are you converting the Mongolians through wrestling? The evangelicals are there, baby. I don't know what on earth you're talking about. They will try to say a small line of true Christians exists the entire time. They'll never provide proof, or they're Gnostics. Oh, and another thing that's interesting about this futurist stuff, okay? The futurists, evangelicals and Baptists, they're very pro-Jew and stuff, but at the same time, there's kind of a darker side to it because they think that the end time, all the Jews will either be converted or they'll be annihilated. So how pro-Jew is that? If you asked a rabbinic Jew, do you like that? They'd say absolutely not. They think it's disgusting. But another thing is that you notice a lot of these guys who think the Antichrist, even some Catholics and Orthodox believe this, and I have to correct it. They think the Antichrist is like Nero or a Jewish priest or something. Like it's going to be an evil Jew. Like it's not going to be an evil Jew. Like, I don't think the Antichrist is an evil Jew. I don't know why people think that. Again, like see how complex stuff can get, guys. Is why you have to pay attention. I'm attacking Zionism. Evangelicals and Baptists are pro-Zionist. Adam Green is right to attack them for being brainwashed by the Yehud. Let's all be honest with that. Even though Gentiles invented it, they idolize the Yehud. And not just like ethnic Hebrews. Like they're not idolizing Moses from the Old Testament. They're just idolizing modern rabbinic Jews. So weird. But then at the same time, I'm pushing back against the idea that, hey, just because they're doing that doesn't mean the Antichrist is a Jewish guy. The Antichrist is said to come out of the Christian religion. Right? He was inside the Christian religion and then he left the Christian religion. Okay? He confuses the Christian religion. That's the whole point. He confuses the early believers. That is the point that St. Paul is making. So if you read 1 John and you read John's Apocalypse and you read St. Paul and Timothy and Thessalonians and Colossians as well, he is talking about a group of people who deny the Christ, but yet they claim to be part of the church or the church. So Rick Perry says self-insertion in fan fiction is always a red flag, and females especially read 50 Shades, and I feel the same about historicism. I love how those two topics cross the line. So Rick is basically saying that he's not. I don't think Rick believes in historicism. So Rick would basically just say like, "Hey, it's a self-insertion." What does that mean, guys? What's a self-insertion? Well, it just basically means claiming that we get to interpret the historicism properly, and everybody else has it wrong. My enemy, the Pope, has to be the enemy. So you can't read the book of Revelation with a bias. You can't go in there going, I already know that the Pope's Antichrist, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to make sure everybody knows that that's the truth. You have to deduce these things via actually reading it and doing a proper exegete. So if you want the Protestant opinion, you can read E.B. Eliot, the Matthew Gill or Henry Gill, one of those. Like, there's a variety of people who talk about eschatology. So he will be an Orthodox apostate. Onyx Rock says, well, I don't think that it's going to be somebody who just right now in history pops up like, oh, a Greek dude, Lavriotis or whatever, is going to show up, Sergios, and he's going to be the Antichrist. No, I don't think that. What I think is that the Antichrist figure or groups, as interpreted in the Greek historicist position, are Christians who are against orthodoxy. So that's what it would mean. It would mean heterodox who are trying to destroy orthodoxy. That's what it means. So if you're going to ask the Eastern Orthodox historicist method, who is the Antichrist? They would say it's Christians who are against orthodoxy. Some of them would probably say the Pope, and then they would say Islam is the beast. So you can check out the neo-historicism stuff. As for partial preterism, they don't care about that. They're not going to consider they don't consider the Catholic Church to be the Antichrist or anything like that. So again, there's different views here. Now, I've come out in support of historicism multiple times because I've pointed to the Orthodox interpretations of it, but that doesn't mean that there's only one interpretation. So it doesn't mean that you have to declare, hey, if you're a historicist, you automatically have to run around decapitating people based on what E.B. Eliot said. That's not true whatsoever. E.B. Eliot has some pretty good points to make. I need to finish reading it to see if I disagree on any of it. Like Revelation, the fifth trumpet, Revelation 9 is pretty interesting with the rise of Islam. I think he gets those dates correct. I think that's correct. So I would definitely consider looking at that. Walmart Wade says $1.99 USD. Thank you very much for super chat. Posted a follow-up under first super chat mode. No big deal. Oh, my bad. Did I miss that? Walmart Wade. Oh, my bad. All right, here we go. Schweitzer, Weiss, and other liberal German critical scholars believe Jesus and Paul were failed lunatic end-of-the-world prophets. Is there a comprehensive ortho response to things? Well, that's the thing. Like, the scripture does not say the world is going to end immediately, so that's it. All right? They misinterpret this because Jesus says, act as if it's going to end. And if they actually read the parables properly, they would know what Christ is talking about. Remember the thieves, the parable of the thieves? Why does he bring that up? The thief in the night? So that people don't try to do a guessing game and go, oh, what, Jesus is coming back today. No, he's not. He's coming tomorrow. Based on my calculation, he's coming in 2035. So I have until 2035 to repent and become a better person. But Christ is telling us, no, you can't do that. You can't just repent and become a better person in 2035, because then you're just going to take advantage of all that time in between then. So Christ says that he shall come like a thief in the night. You won't know the day. So he says, act as if the apocalypse is going to happen tomorrow. He's not saying it's literally tomorrow. All right? He's not saying that at all. And when he says, oh, there's going to be calamities and things will be overturned and the sun will go red and the sky will go black, and pray that it's not on the Sabbath. That's not the end of the world. Okay? He's literally talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. It literally says the time of the Gentiles has come and all will be destroyed, meaning Jerusalem. So it can't be Gentiles destroy the world. What is he talking about? In the first century, Nero is going to develop the nuclear atomic bomb and just destroy everybody? Like, that's not the case. Clearly, that every single commentary on that will tell you. Someone dropped something heavy over there. Anyway, they will tell you that passage, that prediction, is just all about the destruction of Jerusalem. Not every single time Paul and Peter and Christ mention something in the future, oh, that's it, guys, it's the end of the world, it's the end times. No. All right, that's not the case whatsoever. A lot of the times he's talking about an event that is soon to pass. Okay? It's like the book of Revelation. People say, well, shouldn't have Revelation all happen in the first 5 minutes of the first century? No. Elements of it did. happened soon to pass within like a year of when it was written or at the current time. Some were many years later, some were decades later. Even if you're a partial preterist, you would still say this stuff happens decades and decades down the line. It doesn't all happen in the first 5 days after the apocalypse is written. Makaro, I got your book. That's a gift for my birthday. That's awesome. All right, let me go down. I missed a bunch of chats. Unrelated, but Jim, have you heard about the Orthodox prophecy of the Marble King under the Hagia Sophia? I've heard of it, but I don't know that much about it, to be honest. It seems to run in a lot of like conspiracy circles. John Gill's commentary on Revelation is in-depth historicist, free online. Yep, as is E.B. Elliott. I showed you guys the link to that. Your mic is cutting out. Sorry, sometimes the internet goes in and out. 2007, after 6 years in the Melkite Greek Catholic Church, Steve says, I used to be a Zionist. I was raised a Baptist, a former Freemason, and I'm directly, you're not a Southern man, directly descended from Mizrahi Palestinian Jews who converted Christianity. I didn't stop being a Zionist till 2007. Yeah, I guess like I can't blame, this is the thing, I get more angry when Gentiles, non-Jews, are Zionists. It's like, what are you doing? There's no reason. This stuff is stupid. Like, you're making Adam Green look correct. We already did the grilling of Adam Green last year, guys. But I just find it bizarre. Like, but when an ethnic Jew does Zionism, it's like, okay, I'm not forgiving it, but like I can understand. Like, obviously, a Jew is in support of Jews. Like, wow, that's not a shocker or anything. No big final boss Antichrist. I'm not saying there won't be. I'm just saying it's not like the Islamic eschatology where it's like this duel of fates. It's not a superhero movie. I think Catholics develop futurism. Yeah, exactly. You don't even need to say the word I think. That's just proven. That's a proven fact. And so if you are a Catholic, you can take pride in the fact that the Counter-Reformation was a resounding success, because Protestantism in this country is a complete joke. As we showed in the map, Baptists are the lion's share of Protestants. They hate everything to do with Protestantism, unless they're Reformed Baptist. The theology makes no sense, and their eschatology is just mule. It's just mule. It is mule nonsense. I need to check one thing, and then I'll be back with you guys. Me personally, I'm still doing a lot of research into historicism, so I'm not a master of it. I've just said it is an option that you may do if you are Orthodox. There is no anathematization. You can do historicism. All right. HC. How do you understand Christ's 1,000-year reign in the book of Revelation? Seems to be strong evidence for partial preterism. That's the thing, though. The 1,000-year reign in historicism is not supposed to be something that happens at the end of time. That would still be futurism. So the historicists will admit that there is the 1,000-year reign, and it does start back then. Most of them would. My grandfather defends Jews with his life. You cannot criticize them at all around him. That might be a World War II thing. It might not, that, and it's kind of sick how much guilt they put into the greatest generation and the boomer generation. The amount of guilt they pumped into them about the Yehuda is pretty weird, okay? It's pretty sad how much guilt they threw at them concerning that, turning the whole religion into it. He says, I'm mixed, obviously, but I have Jewish ancestry. I'm mostly white, though. Well, I'm going to open up the chat because let's see what kind of loonies we get this time. Let me put it in the pinned chat. You guys are free to join. I think the lecture has ended, and now we're free to talk. Today's topics are going to be evangelicalism, baptism, Baptist Church, historic Protestantism, non-historic Protestantism, Israel, Palestine stuff. You can mention that too. That ad block. Live chat. Pin message. Okay. You guys are free to join. Please like the video, by the way. I better not see like 85 viewers and 2 likes. Join. We're all waiting. Two Crooks says he'll join soon. That gives you guys a few moments to get ahead of him in line. So please do. Otherwise, there's not much else to talk about This stream, I think I've covered this stuff to death. Like, whew. I do want to bring up a couple Bible verses though. So give me a second, and then I'll let whoever wants to come on come on. Yeah, I saw whoever came in. Just give me a second. Wait, what was that? 7. Right here. So we're looking at the epistle to the Hebrews. St. Paul talking. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. You guys see? Here. I'll go down there. And then we'll let the next guy in. Or the first guy in. Because finding fault with them, he says, Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I disregarded them, says the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, says the Lord, I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, they shall be my people. None of them shall teach his neighbor and none his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness and their sins, and their laws deeds I will remember no more. In that, he says, a new covenant he has made, the first obsolete. Now what is becoming old and obsolete is ready to vanish away. So, as you can see here, ethnic Jews are included, but it does not say that we continue that covenant that we had before. So an ethnic Jew can be part of it. But remember, we can't just cherry pick verses. So Evangelical might look at that and say, bam, rabbinic Judaism is part of the covenant. No. If we read the entirety of the Epistle of Hebrews in context, go to the first chapter, the Epistle of Hebrews, we're doing this cosmic celebration of the Lord Christ. So you have to accept Christ to be part of this covenant. And in Jeremiah 31:31, right, we see also that there's going to be a new covenant. Same exact thing. And the covenant will be with the Gentiles. And the Gentiles will be the majority of that covenant. Ethnic Jews may join it. But there is no obligation for a Gentile to worship ethnic Jews, nor to put rabbinism on a level of Christianity. We don't believe in dual covenantry. There are not two covenants. End of story. There can never be two covenants. End of story. All right. Who's up here? So.
Hey, you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I was asking about this earlier, but and it's semi-related, but the quote-unquote Arab Jerusalem church, right? Not under the Greeks. Because I was just inquiring about that because, Israel started taking domain over the Armenian quarter in Jerusalem. And, the Greek church has kind of played both sides in the sense of, they owned like 40% of the old city. And then they started selling to the nation. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but yeah, Israel. But basically, how do you see how do you see this? I just wondering.
How do I see the event with the selling of the church and the Greek?
Just generally, like, what could be done to better these conditions or possibly future outcomes and whatever.
Yeah. So the problem is, as you said, we have in the Holy Land kind of a mix of things going on. And a lot of the Arabs don't necessarily trust the Greek church. Some Greeks get mad at that and they think the Arabs are just being ethnophilatist and the Arabs are accusing the Greeks of being ethnophilatist. But the truth of the matter is there is some, might not be ethnophilatism, might not have anything to do with ethnicity, could just be bad geopolitics and greed. But yeah, the Greek church really has not been helping a lot of the Orthodox in Palestine very much. As you said, they've been playing both sides. They have a good rapport with the state of Israel, and they don't seem to be doing much to defend their community there, which is a small community. So it's like, do we care about this community, or is the point of having Greek churches in Israel just to say we have churches in the Holy Land is like an extension of Hellenism? Do we want an extension of Hellenism, or are we saying that we have God's real religion here? Then at the same time, in the Valley of the Christians and other parts of the Syrian coast, a lot of the Greek Orthodox Christians there are not receiving any help from Greece. Like Greece will say, hey, we stand with the Orthodox Christians. We don't want any minorities to get hurt. But then funds from the Greek Orthodox Church in Syria are going away from Christians and towards other groups. And it has to make one wonder, like, forget the racial component. There is something geopolitical going on where these churches, for whatever reason, are either afraid to or just unwilling to protect their own flock, even if it's a different ethnicity. They're afraid to do that for some reason. Either they're afraid to, or they stand to make a lot of money by not doing that. And so you've seen that the Orthodox community has not done well in Palestine or Syria, and there's been a lot of angst against that. So again, like historically, the Greeks and the Arabs always got along in terms of orthodoxy, but lately has not been the case. So, I mean, do I think that'll change? No, even though, there's problems, I don't think it'll actually change. I don't see how it would.
But to me, sorry if I don't know the history, but it's, obviously Greece was, Byzantium and whatever, and it's the whole sort of power of centralization thing. But it's bizarre that, it's a Greek church, and that's the only church for orthodoxy there, right? And it's like that happens in like South America too, where you have like Brazilians who are like, we're Greeks, and whatever. And there's just like, it's, to me, I belong to a smaller national church. Sorry, I'm sick, but it's kind of bizarre, right? And so like, at what point does a national church start to be considered for, regardless of whatever it is?
Again, no, I think you're correct on that. I just don't know if that'll really happen. I mean, it's been so long, it's been so much history, and there have been times where the Arabs have said, hey, we're not being represented right, or, because it's not really about a linguistic thing. They have no problem Greeks learning some Arabic and Arabs learning some Greeks, communicating with each other. That's not the problem. The problem is the country of Greece doesn't really stand to gain much, unfortunately, by helping out Orthodox Christians in Syria and Palestine. So because of that, those Palestinians and Syrians don't have the best interests at heart. So I do agree with you. I just don't know if or how it would ever occur.
All right. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Kiss the Wall. Who's this?
Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, hey, Nick. How's it going?
I just have one question. I know we lament all the time about how everything, as I understand, is bad and stupid, but one byproduct of it is that I think with like at least like the new generation, it can lead to like futurism and Zionism like dying out. You see that happening?
Probably. I don't see a lot of young people, declaring that, other than the guy that just debated Jay Dyer on his channel. I don't see a lot of young people going, man, I can't wait to be a Zionist Christian. I'm pretty sure that with the death of, not the death, but like, with the irrelevancy of the boomer generation in the future, I don't see how that would live on. Because even in like Baptist country, the younger crowd is not that religious. It's a cultural thing. So how is it going to live on? I don't think so. I think we're at the end of that time period. So you're probably right.
Yeah, I just don't see it popular. If anything, the opposite is more popular, especially when you see like everyone on these college campuses are more pro Palestine and pro Ziono state.
Definitely, yeah. The younger people, their opinions might change as they get a little older, but they're never going to be like, hey, I'm a staunch Zionist evangelical Christian. Like, that is the number one thing that's dying down. Even though evangelical Baptists still going to be the biggest Christianity in the country, they're not as religious anymore. Like their last great days of glory were like the early 2000s. Now it's going downhill. So I don't see how that stuff could stay forever. MKG said legacy media going down. That's true too. Like with the death of TV news, people don't just believe everything they see on the television anymore, which makes it a lot harder to command people to be Zionists or something.
So, one more question. Have you kissed the wall?
Nope.
Will you ever kiss the wall?
Nope.
Take a trip. Good.
Well, no, wait, who knows? Maybe if I get a cordial invitation from Tony Blair and George Bush. I'm kidding. But no. Just imagine there's going to be like an AI image of me putting like a rolled up like receipt from a Chinese restaurant into the Wailing Wall. I mean, we'll see. But that's a whole nother topic. Like that's clearly not the wall of the actual Temple of Jerusalem. Archaeology has proven that's like Fort Antonia wall from the Romans, so that's kind of sad.
There you go, guys. Jim has just confirmed he's an agent of Mossad.
It's over, guys. Remember when like Adam Green kept trying to pin me on the Evangelical? He's like, your religion tells you to go and worship Israel. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And like, he couldn't contemplate that. It would not compute. He's like, no, the Christian church is all about Zionist Judaism. It's
Yeah,
like, no,
you have
not.
to explain to him like nobody. You have to like debunk futurism and what that debate. Explain like everyone that believes in that is like kufar.
I was like, dude, this is like Kafir beliefs. I'm like, listen to all this stuff, like pretty new stuff. He's like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's all Jewish stuff. I can't blame him though. Like, if you live in America and all you see are Baptists saying we have to fight the Muslimin on behalf of Israel, then it does kind of seem like pretty weird. But thankfully, like I said, seems to be dying down. And thankfully, the people are not transforming into neo-pagans in the stead of that.
I don't know, man. Well, I would say that's like a pretty popular subculture on the internet, unfortunately.
On the internet, but
Yeah.
not like in real life. Like, I don't think there's families like, hey, grandpa, let's go worship Yotnar. Like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Ken on. You can stay in though. Hey Ken, how's it going?
Hello, how are you doing?
Good.
Good. I had just a question. Isn't the Antiochian Church independent from the Church of Constantinople?
Yeah, it's not like part of the Constantinopolitan Church, but it is linked to the Church of Greece itself. Like they are linked. It is called the Greek Orthodox Church of Antioch. So it's not like it's just called the Arab Church of Arabia or something.
No, yeah, I
They do have a
understand.
link, but yeah, go ahead.
But I mean, we're autocephalous, so wouldn't it mean that we're completely independent? I mean, we're the same like denomination, of course, but
Yeah, for the most part, but like there still seem to be a lot of issues where in maybe not right at this moment, but in just the past couple decades alone, you've had a lot of the patriarchs. We're specifically talking about the Jerusalem, not just Antioch, but in the Jerusalem jurisdiction, a lot of them were from Greece itself, and they had trouble balancing Israel versus Palestine, and so that's what the other caller was talking about. In Palestine and Jordan, and I guess the Sinai Peninsula, but that's not quite as relevant. There does seem to be kind of a primacy of people from Greece proper rather than being the locals of that church, at least leading it in the past few decades. So
yeah, it's
that's really the
unfortunate.
problem.
Unfortunate. But isn't Patriarch Theophilus like reversing all this stuff where he's trying to take back the buildings rather than sell them? I remember reading an article about that recently.
Yeah, I believe that they're trying to reverse that now. And this is not like the patriarch decides all the geopolitics or anything. So it's not entirely up to him, but he is trying to reverse some of that stuff. But like I said, what's going on with Syria and other countries, Palestine as well, not just including the Jerusalem Old City controversies, but just the communities dying, right? Like the Palestinian Orthodox community is withering away, and the Syrian is under a lot of pressure. And there's just not a lot of there's a lot of words from the Greek government, for instance, but zero action or literally negative action. Like there are reports of charity being taken away from the Orthodox Christians in Syria after the fall of Damascus.
Oh,
Really crazy.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. I mean, I have friends from Jordan who are Orthodox, and the stories I hear is like really unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot that could be done better. I mean, it's just gonna have to be a case of like people need to realize you either support your community, your tribe, or nobody else will. Like this idea that we live in this like postmodern world and everybody just likes everybody, it's wrong. Only like Europeans believe that. Only people in Europe and America believe that. The rest of the world doesn't really believe that. So if you ask Muslims in Syria, who are they for? They're for Islam. They're for their group. They're for the Sunni group. But if you ask the Orthodox, who are you for in Syria, like someone who's not from Syria, a lot of times, if we're talking about Greece, you're going to see a lot of people be more universalist with it and say, oh, we want to help everybody. So that's great and all, but the Orthodox Church is not going to survive if they don't get some special attention. Like, it can't just be we help everybody and do trickle-down economics. We need to put some attention toward your own compatriots. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. But I also wanted to ask like something. So I've talked to a lot of like random evangelicals about all this stuff, and not the stuff about the Orthodox Church, but about the Futurism stuff. And like, whenever they bring up these random passages in the Old Testament, they're always so sure that they're interconnected and stuff. But like, what's a good way to ask them whether they're even connected? Because it just seems so random to me, you know?
Well, that's the thing. Like the burden of proof is actually on them, not on you. They need to prove that all these verses go together, number one. And number two, that they're talking about the events in question without being vague. So the dates have to line up. Like there are dates in Daniel, Isaiah, Revelation. They use like days and months and years, and those have to add up, or else it's basically 100% arbitrary, like you said, which a lot of futurists do. They don't care about the days. They can say after 1,200 days. Well, does that mean 1,200 years? Is it the year, month, day prophecy the historicists use in Daniel and other places of the prophecy? Or is it literally days? Like, we need to know what we're using here. And they'll ignore that and just arbitrarily go, Gog and Magog is Russia and Ukraine. But if I asked you that 15 years ago, they probably wouldn't say Gog and Magog is Russia and Ukraine, because no one could have predicted there'd be a Russian-Ukraine war. So they probably would have said, I remember in the old days, it used to be Turkey and Russia was Gog and Magog. Now it's a Russian-Ukrainian war. Like, it changes all the time. There's no way to know what's actually right. They're just trying to keep up with local events and hoping that they're going to be right at one point, and one of these wars kickstarts World War III, and then they can claim, oh, see, we were right about the end of the world. But it's all just a guessing game. It's very arbitrary.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. I'll definitely keep that in mind next time. But anyways, I'm going to hop down now. Thank you and have a blessed night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Ken. Ryan. Oh, I didn't click Ryan. That was by accident. But anyway, Solid Snake, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. What do you like to talk about?
Yeah. So I was wondering, like, is it just like the French and the Americans that take up this like weird not dispensationalist, but this libertarian position?
About what?
Like in terms of what you mentioned earlier with the other guy?
It's a lot of Europe. Like a lot of Europeans, unfortunately, think that Christianity equals be nice to everybody no matter what they're doing. Or who cares about Christianity? We have Enlightenment morality, and that means we can't be mean. Like we cannot prefer our own people. Like it's a lot of people. It's the majority of people in the West, and even people in other parts of Europe that aren't really considered the West. A lot of them believe in this stuff, and it has nothing to do with being trad and based. You can even have people who are traditional Orthodox, and they may still have influences of this trickling down to them, simply because of like Enlightenment morality and stuff like that. Everybody gets their cues from the West. And so there's good things that the West does, and there's bad things that it does. And morality, universalism, and stuff like that is one of those things that the West does that a lot of Christians think, well, we need to copy this because the West equals Christianity. And it's just a very bad, almost like a word concept fallacy that people have done. Which is why I try to course correct a lot of that here on the channel, so that we're not blurring out the gospel in favor of modern philosophy.
Yeah, and I was seeing like a little bit of like even Thomism like affecting evangelical or Protestant ideology in some fashion.
Why don't you explain how that works?
Well, like
That's that.
From what I understand, Thomism has affected like Protestant theology to the point where a lot of these like some Protestants will like rely on empiricism rather than faith in terms of their theology.
Oh yeah, well that'll definitely go with the main lines for sure. Like they get there, even though they don't like Aristotle, they don't like Aristotle, the original reformers. The Reformed theology that comes about like a century after the reformers, they do rely a lot on empirical Aristotelian philosophy, which is all from the scholastic side of the Latin Church, Catholic Church. So yeah, like they do get a lot of that from there. But then the further you go away, like the Baptists and the Evangelicals, they're not quite as empirical. Like a lot of I wouldn't say it's blind faith, but it's a very kind of charismatic, almost like how Pentecostals behave in South America, but not quite as loose. But yeah, you'll see a lot of that stuff in the evangelical community. But no, they do get the empirical part. Mainline Protestants, they get that all from Catholicism. So it's not, they're Reformed Catholics, or what they were trying to do at the start. But now it became its own religion, essentially.
in terms of like the Israel stuff, like what is the like, let's say hypothetically, like the US just completely pulled out of the Middle East and it was just Eastern Orthodox people in the Middle East or Israel, and we just let them and the Palestinians fight it out. Do you think we would be better off or what?
What do you mean? Who would be fighting out between the Palestinians and who? The Israelis?
Israel.
Well, I don't know, because here's the thing. Like, Israel was created as a Western-dominated project. You know, Jay Dyer was talking about this recently. Okay, the Israelis were supposed to be under British tutelage for much longer, but they ended up doing their own versions of terrorism and got the Europeans out, and so they ended up ruling their own country. But there would be no country without the influence of the British and later the influence of America. There would be no Israel. So for America to pull out, I'm sure some European countries, probably Britain, even though people talk about the Islamism stuff, I think that's all just just people being weak. But if the government really wanted to, they could go gloves off and protect Israel if they wanted. But no, I don't think it would be as simple as just everything would be better off. Like, the Israelis would clearly win. They have all the weaponry, the technology. They have a working state. The Palestinians don't. Ideally, what would have happened at the end of World War I is that, you know, that land would have just been part of Jordan, and then parts of it could be not like autonomous, but just kind of like autocephalous almost for the Jews to live in. So you have Jewish neighborhoods and Jewish cities inside the Jordanian state. Because without the creation of Israel, there would be no reason for the creation of Palestine. Palestine doesn't have to be its own state. It should be part of Jordan or Syria. And within that, you would have territories in it that were majority Jewish or mixed areas. And that would have been probably the best, because the religious Jews don't think it's right to have an ethno-state of Jewry. Like, they think it's wrong because they think they're tempting God. So they would prefer to just live in Palestine without making it the Jewish state. So really, Israel is mainly for secular Jews. It's not, the religious Jews don't like the government there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if I were to poll like all the Orthodox Jews here, they would all be against the current state of Israel. But while we're on this topic, do you think the Shia movement has failed, and by extension Iran, over the past couple of months?
The Shia movement will never fail, because the sun and the moon and the stars are all Ali. No, I'm kidding. The Shia movement, yeah. So the stuff has failed. If you guys don't know what that is, let me just get it out right now. The Shia croissant map. Let's get this going. Hang on. So it's actually not proper, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is it. We'll do this instead. So he's just such a bad map,
by the way? But go ahead.
What do you say?
I said, where's Two Crooks, by the way?
I don't know. Probably off doing crime. Here. So this is not actually a political map. It's just religious Shiism. But you can see the countries with the Shia populations, not including the Gulf countries. So ignore Kuwait, Bahrain, and stuff, and part of Saudi Arabia. But Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. Actually, that's wrong. Lebanon's now 40% Shia. So actually, I'm going to close that because it's not even an accurate map. But the point is, those countries, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, have a massive amount of Iranian influence. Syria, not anymore. Now, Syria doesn't really have any Shia, to be honest. The Alawites are really like the Druze. They're a weird syncretic folk religion. They just, for some reason, they were brought into the fold of Shiism just for the point of the war. Now the Shia don't really care about them that much anymore. But that Syria with the Alawites in charge, and then with Russian influence, Russia and Iran being friendly, and then of course the certain yellow group in Lebanon, and of course with Iraq. So Iran has still the lion's share of power in Iraq. They still are disrupting everybody's trading outposts in Yemen, destroying parts of the Red Sea and everything, and otherwise being a pain. But their influence in Syria and Lebanon has been completely destroyed, basically. You have a new president in Lebanon who's anti-Hezb, anti-Iran. Nobody seems to care about their politics anymore. They're still there. They can still be like a mafia. They can be dangerous, but they're not a working military or army that much anymore. All their top brass was either destroyed, corrupted, or compromised. And then with the conquest of Syria by the rebels, which was like the most pathetic conquest of all time, that's it. Like Iran has lost the Levant. Now they just have Iraq and Yemen. So they're still there. They're still powerful. They can still annoy people and cause a lot of problems, but they don't have an ally in Syria anymore. So they can't freely go to Syria, and they can't get to Lebanon from Syria anymore. And their group in Lebanon is severely crippled. So yeah, that age is definitely over.
So would you say it's fair to say that the Islamic State has become increasingly weakened after all these like skirmishes and their mainline like boomers who are radical, kind of like traditionalists, getting all wiped out?
So you mean like all of Islam in the Middle East?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say that, to be honest. I think the youth, even though they have the internet and stuff, that doesn't. Here's what I think a lot of Westerners get wrong. They think, oh, we're going to give the internet to Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and then they're all going to become liberals like people here. That's not the case. What happens is maybe 2% of the population gets really, really liberal, and probably to begin with, they already were liberal. They just couldn't publicly announce that in those countries. So that aside, you still have a lot of people that are fanatically Muslim, or at least nominally Muslim, and very conservative, and they're not going to change that. They just happen to consume, like they literally do slop with Western entertainments. Like they'll watch like Friends and Frasier and all this other stuff, and they'll consume all this slop, but then they'll like flip around when they're done consuming slop and be like, oh yeah, the West sucks ass. So like that's just how they'll always be. Like the West is good for providing technology and entertainment, but otherwise it's rat shit. And so I don't think they're going to get liberalized like that. In fact, the more liberal time period for the Middle East was probably from the early 1900s up until the 80s. So in that period, the main powers were all secular Arab governments, and they didn't really care about Islamism, and they made it all about nationalism. And so they're kind of copying European ideology. Even the Lebanese were doing that, but that since died out, and so there was a Islamic revival. And so I don't think Muslims in the Middle East are going to get more liberal per se, but they'll probably get sick and tired of all the wars and stuff, and they might get less fanatical. I don't think they're going to just like become totally westernized. They're just going to be like watching Western TV all the time.
Well, I just think they seem a lot more tame now compared to the Ottoman Empire.
Well, this is the thing. That's the thing with that. I want to explain two things. We have a good comment here that I think would lend itself to the situation. Saudis being liberalized by Mohammed bin Salman, who promotes rock concerts and wants to turn the country into Miami. He locked up the Islamic sheikhs who criticize him. But the thing is, like, that's because political Islamism is being clamped down in those countries. But they're still very conservative countries. And the rock concerts and all that is really just to make them look good for the West. It's not like they want their people to stop being Muslim. Bin Salman just said, hey, we're done with speculating on the hadiths. We have the Quran, we have the law. That stuff's never going to change. But they don't allow for lefty Islamism. Saudi Arabia and Egypt are in favor of good Islamism, which can be their ally. They're not in favor of lefty Islamism like the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood. But to answer your question, like with the Ottoman period, there's a few things that were going on there. It really depends on the population. The Turks were so sectarian and genocidal because they were combining Islamic fanaticism with nationalism. So everybody who wasn't a Turkish Muslim was rat shit, and we had to kill them. And so that was their idea. And the Austrian painter, he got his inspiration from Ataturk. They wanted their pure ethnocentric country, so they annihilated everybody. But the Arabs at the time weren't especially fanatic. Like they were more religious than Europeans, but they weren't especially fanatic. Like you wouldn't have had an ISIS group pop up at that time. But for the Turks, definitely, they were pretty bad.
Gotcha. All right, I appreciate you clearing that up for me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we've got Ryan, and then I'll let Maximus on. How's it going, Ryan?
Hey, hello, Jim. Just had a question about the Antichrist. So, do you think that if you take it in a literal sense, that the Antichrist will come from the tribe of Dan, and like Saint Irenaeus says, right? Or sorry, Saint Hippolytus or pseudo Hippolytus, depending on whether you think his work on the end of the world, I think it's called, that the Antichrist will, love the nation of the Jews and rebuild the temple. What do you think about that?
It could be the case. I mean, it really just depends on eschatological quote science that you believe in. Like I said, if you search all of the saints, you're going to find quite a few different positions. None of them will be futurism, and none of them will be full preterism. So they're all going to say the Antichrist either has arrived in some governmental way, like the spirit of it, or he's going to arrive, but not that all that stuff's been done in the first century, which would be full preterism. So yes, you can find in the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church the more partial preterist idea that, hey, it's going to be based on a revival of rabbinism or a Jewish kingdom. Now, some of them will, to their credit, say is going to be Christians who team up with these rabbinics, and so that'll be the apostasy from within the Christian church. The historicist view pretty much is basically the seat of the papacy is the Antichrist and Islam is the beast. So again, it just depends on the type of eschatological science that you're going to believe in. You can find saints who adhere to either or. That would be my answer to that. It really just depends on who you're listening to, and at the end of the day, we don't know for sure exactly how everything's going to happen, which is the purpose of the thief of the night parable, that you can't like prepare for the end times. You have to act like every day's your last.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. Thanks for bringing me on. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question, Ryan. So yeah, guys, you don't have to be a historicist to be part of Orthodoxy. Most people are not, and they've probably never heard of it. I just like to bring it up because it's a minority position most people don't know about. Maximus, how's it going?
How's it going, Jim? How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, you're talking about a lot of maybe some of my favorite topics. Shia Islam, dispensationalism, Zionism. But on what you just said though, there's actually an interesting piece written by Francis Turretin, defending historicism on why the Pope is the Antichrist. And one thing that's very interesting is that when the Gregorian reformers were being deposed, right, by the Western Emperor, the council that deposed them referred to them as the Antichrist, actually. And Francis Turretin talks about that, so I thought you might find that interesting.
I do find that interesting. Where does he talk about that? Like, is there a
It's
writing?
it's a whole book. It's called something to the effect of why the Pope is the Antichrist, by Francis Turretin.
Yeah,
And
I need to read more of Turretin. I've started reading some more Reformed theology recently, getting into John Owen. So I do want to definitely read that. That's a great recommendation. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic. Like people, it seems like online all there is like evangelical futurism, which is obviously trash, or there's just Catholics and partial preterism. It's like there's nothing in between. Nobody ever discusses historicism, which is why I bring it up a lot.
Well, and it ties in. So I'm going to tie it together because again, you've been mentioning some of my favorite topics, so I got to tie in as many as possible in a short time. But this is related to dispensationalism. We said about Turretin and traditional Protestant view of the church, things like that. I mean, obviously, I think this is a pretty big problem, but they would talk about the perpetual existence of some kind of visible church. They would talk about a legitimate call to ministry existing in the Roman Church as a justification for Protestant churches.
One second, just I want to let the audience know because a lot of the people here don't know any of the terms. So the Reformed position, or at least some of their position, is that there's a visible church and the invisible church, guys. So they basically believe that even though the majority of the church was in apostasy, there are still saints in the Catholic period that may have been like ignorant of theology, or they were a minority view. So that's what he's talking about. Please continue.
Yeah. And also because they would say, like Roman Catholics would say, "Oh, you're self-called. Like, where are you getting this prerogative from?" And they would say that the ordinations that the reformers received in the Roman Church was like a legitimate call, like you see in the Book of Acts. That only ordained ministers are allowed to have authority in church. And obviously Turretin, and the Reformed would have ideas about like, yeah, you shouldn't schism from fellow reformed bodies, and they would have an idea of, you know, the keys and things like this. But obviously this gets very complicated when you get with Baptists, right? Because Baptists, there's no there's no real mark of the existing church. With the Reformed, I mean, it's a bit, you have baptism, right? And baptism would be regenerating those who were elect and things like that. With Lutherans, it's even more evident, right? You have baptism as a kind of something that's preserving the church, but the Baptists don't think any of those baptisms are real baptisms. That's why you start to logically get to the trail of blood idea, right? You kind of start to logically get to you needed some kind of visible church, and ideally a true church, right? You get to the whole, there was these Baptists living out in the countryside or wherever. Now, how does this tie in with dispensationalism? Okay, so the dispensationalists would say, we actually reject this idea. And we reject this idea because this is all based off the idea that there's some kind of comparison. This is some kind of covenant theology, some kind of comparison with the Old Testament church and the New Testament church. And that's actually not true. There's no comparison, and the church is just totally 100% invisible. It's just those that are quote unquote, seated in heavenly places. There's really no relation to any kind of visible institution. And if you actually look up stuff about the Baptist Trail of Blood and all this stuff, they'll
I have
actually,
it. I have it on the
yeah,
screen here. This
yeah,
is the Trail of Blood.
yeah, yeah. But the part of the like post-Protestant evangelical no ecclesiology is part of dispensationalism, because they believe there's no comparison with Israel and the church. They're almost two radically different things.
And I would say that this kind of also goes to show their nascent Marcionism, because they're so
Yeah.
detached from this like governmental system that
Yeah.
we have in the Old Testament. So at least with the reformers, like the real Protestants,
Yeah.
they're not going to say like, yeah, guys, we're just a spiritual ether cloud. Like they'll say, no, there are real people throughout time. We need government. We're not totally detached from history. Obviously, you have St. Augustine, massive in the Protestant
Yeah.
churches. But yeah, please continue.
Oh, well, I mean, it's on the Marcion point, I mean, it gets to a point of when you really listen to some of these dispensationalists. I mean, I heard something the other day where this guy said, we're not in the new covenant. Apparently it's also a common position to say that like the Beatitudes are like what will happen in the future Messianic kingdom. Like they're not actually relevant today. I mean the really radical ones, you get into stuff that's about, really Jesus was for the Jews, and then, it was about they rejected him, and then you get into stuff about like what Jesus is preaching in the Gospels in the early church is actually some kind of like different gospel because it's too works based. Like, just totally out there stuff. And I think honestly, I was thinking about this the other day, like, when it talks about another gospel and like being anathema, like that this is straight up a different gospel. Like the idea that Jesus came for the Jews and then they rejected him, so he decided to do this. That's just a different gospel. And it says when on the road to Emmaus, the apostle said he was supposed to redeem Israel, right? They said that's why the Messiah came. This is Jesus of Nazareth. We thought he was come to redeem Israel, but like I guess not. And then Jesus shows them how like he obviously did redeem Israel, right? But they
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. I always
But
find
they
that
don't
line of
think that
reasoning
happened.
so weird. Like, oh,
Yeah.
he was a prophet just for the Jews, and
Yeah.
that's it, guys. It's like, oh, yeah, at the last second he changed his mind, and now it's the Gentile church. It's like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, yeah, and it's like he didn't really accomplish what he was supposed to do. It's like I don't know. It's starting to be like this is a. I mean, is this the same religion? Like,
It's not.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not. It's not even the same religion as like real Protestantism. It's like
no,
just not the same religion at all. So
no. And
definitely.
yeah. I thought the other thing, because a lot of these people, it's another thing where I don't know, it's the same people. I think there's a bit of a connection, but I saw some video the other day where they were talking about repentance is not actually salvific. They're like, oh, repentance might be a fruit of the spirit or something, but like, repentance is not actually doesn't save you, do anything.
They think
It's
everything's
like,
a fruit of the spirit. It's like
yeah,
a market, like a fruit market. Like so
yeah,
everything's
yeah,
fruit
yeah,
of the spirit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's just like, if repentance isn't part of the gospel, it's like, man, this is actually a different gospel.
I agree fully. Thank you very much for
Okay.
expanding on those topics. I appreciate you coming in. I'm going to get the last two callers and then, because I got to go in like 15,
Okay.
20 minutes. But thank you very much, Maximus. All right. We'll get Ol Ahmed here and then we'll have two crooks. How's it going?
Hi. Um, I'd like to ask about interpreting these things. I know that there are some people who really believe the end times are near and they make radical decisions in their life, like refusing to have children and basically selling off their property because it's going to be useless anyway. The second coming of God is here. I think you would agree that's not a really healthy behavior, but I guess what would be what would be a healthy way of approaching that? Like on one hand, you would say you have to live as if the end time is near. Well, if that's true, why don't everyone just become monks?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There were a lot of people who did justify that and say, "Hey, I should just be a monk anyway because this life's not that important." Now, in reality, the way to do monasticism is if you're called to it, which basically just means like, "Hey, this kind of like normal lifestyle stuff isn't for me." And I'm gonna devote my life to God. It's supposed to be a special devotion. I'm just like, "Oh, I gotta be a monk of the end times." So the way in which you're supposed to approach it is based on theology or based on soteriology. So when Jesus says that he's arriving like a thief at night, it means that you need to get your act together. You need to always be acting holy because you never know when that judgment day will come. It doesn't mean, hey, we got to burn everything and just live naked and homeless because it could be tomorrow. On the contrary, he's saying it could be tomorrow, but it could not be tomorrow. So you still have to live a good life. You can't just go everything. It's almost the opposite of what you just said there. So these people saying, let's just burn all our furniture and live in the wilderness because the end times are coming. That's going against what Christ said because he doesn't want you to predict, it's definitely tomorrow. He's just saying it could be. So make sure that you have your spiritual affairs in order. But he's not going to give us the time because he doesn't want people doing that. So no, you still have to live a good life. Like St. Paul says, a man who does not provide for his family is, unworthy, unrighteous, a shame to him. Well, if you're saying, oh, I don't want to work, I don't want to do anything because the end times is near, you'd be disobeying St. Paul. You'd be disobeying the morality in the Old Testament and a lot of the commands of the New Testament. The New Testament isn't just commands for monastics; it's commands primarily for lay people, and that includes having a family and being with that family and supporting people and living in a good society. St. Paul talks endlessly about how we have to be civil in a society. So that would basically be my answer. Like if they actually thought, hey, the end time's happening now, they would encourage everybody to just drop what they're doing and just forego normal life. But they don't. They just say, don't count on the end times being a million years away. Make sure that if you were going to be judged today, hypothetically, there wouldn't be that much to be ashamed of. So it's more of a spiritual thing than saying, I don't need to go into work tomorrow because it could be the end times.
All right. Last question. Maybe this is not on topic, but I'm curious. I have recently seen news that Pope Francis is in critical condition. You think that's going to affect the Catholic plans for 2025 and what they've got planned with the Orthodox, if that's significant?
Well, it could be significant, to be honest with you. I sometimes forget that was their plan and that it's coming up now. It's really weird how that's coming up. And right at that time, Pope Francis is, I don't want to say he's on death's door because he's not, but he could be on death's door at some point. So it's pretty interesting stuff. I mean, we'll just have to see. If he's still very sick and unable to do much, then they're going to obviously have somebody else fill in the shoes. I don't think they're going to stop their 2025 plan. You don't just get to control the calendar. So it only happens once in a blue moon. So I don't know what the plan is, but it is interesting how this is all happening around the same time. As for who will be the next pope, some people ask. I have no idea. These trads probably shouldn't get their hopes up. That's going to be Cardinal Robert Serra. It might not be, probably won't be, but who knows? We don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah, all right. That's all I want to ask. Thank you, man.
Cool. Thanks for calling in. All right. Let's get two crooks in here. Oh, we got Joseph. Joseph, you first, and then I'll bring in two crooks.
All right. Hey, Jim. Hey. So first question is just this theory that I've heard that dispensationalism came from the Jesuits. I don't know if you ever heard that. I don't know if there's any validity to that. Do you know anything about that?
Why don't you give me an example? Like, what are people saying about it?
Like it was around the Council of Florence era, like the 15th century. The first dispensationalists, John Nelson Darby and all them, they kind of got it from, I think it was Emmanuel Lacunza, who was a Jesuit, and he was a former Jew, or a rabbinic Jew, and then he converted to Catholicism, and he wrote, basically trying to counter. He was like a counter reformist, trying to counter Luther's accusation that the Pope was the Antichrist. So to kind of shift everything away from that theory of Luther, he came up with this futurist interpretation.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that at the start of the stream. I do believe
Okay.
that is the case. They did, in fact, invent that as a way to push the Protestants or deflect them. It was very successful, but obviously the Catholic Church does not allow you to believe in futurism. Like, you can't be a futurist Catholic Orthodox. So really, it was just made to distract and disunify the Protestants. And even though it didn't make Lutherans futurist, it did make all the Protestants who would spread around the world in the United States, South America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. The vast majority of them are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my second thing is, I'm gonna go listen to Jay Dyer's debate with the Zionist. I only caught like the first 5 minutes, and I'm gonna listen to that after this. And so as a former Messianic, I still hold on to theological Zionism, not political Zionism, in the sense that I believe Jews should have a place to live safely, side by side if possible. Not going to happen, but if possible. I know that some rabbis, disagree with political Zionism or even theological Zionism at this point, wait for the Messiah type of thing. But my thing is, do you believe that Romans 9 still has to be fulfilled, 9 to 11 still has to be fulfilled, as far as the Jews as a collective will have to come to Christ eventually as a people? Do you think that's a prophetic thing?
I don't think it's like they have to, but they should. As for commentary on Romans 9 you were mentioning, I'll look for some commentary before I get back to you on that, so that I give you the proper response to that. But in short, I also said something similar. I said, ideally, ethnicities have their own places to live. They're not all going to get their own ethno-state countries or anything. Ideally, at the end of World War I, Jordan should have controlled the whole area, and there should have been autocephalous areas within the coast where Jews could live, but it's not like they're creating this new country and fighting with other people. And there'd also be no Palestine. It would just be part of Jordan. So that's what I thought should have happened. And T.E. Lawrence, I also think he didn't really necessarily want there to be a Jewish ethno-state either. He thought it would be a mixed country. So that's what I thought should have happened, but now all the damage has been done, so we'll just have to wait and see what occurs.
Yeah, I can actually concur with that, because when I was in Israel, I worked in Israel for about a month with an organization, like a Zionistic organization between Jews and Christians. And I just learned that basically it was socialistic when Israel first started. I went to all the kibbutzim, and it was basically socialist at that point, not non-religious. But yeah, I can. It was more of a secular and political game, not until recent times.
Yeah, definitely. That's why at the start, and this is why this whole, this Jewish conspiracy stuff is stupid. Because at the start, it wasn't America who crafted Israel. Like, the British did it, but then they got betrayed by the Jews, by the Israelis. And the Israelis took the side of the USSR. The USSR was their biggest helper at the start. They were very socialist, and they were very secular, and they didn't make it a religious state. So here, this is kind of this is T.E. Lawrence's idea of what the Middle East should have looked like, actually. So this was his version of dividing it. And even then, he said they don't all necessarily need to be countries. This is just where these people live, and we'll find a way to make that better. But as you can see, he thought that Lebanon should be significantly smaller than what it is today, which obviously there's a reason for that. Armenians in that part of Anatolia, not going to happen today, but that was the idea back then. And then Palestine was supposed to be for the Jews to come in and live there, but also to get along with the local Arabs.
So people got double played.
Yeah. Well, the
One
Palestinians
last question.
got double. Well, yeah, the Palestinians got double played, or rather, the Arabs as a whole got double played. And then the British, even though they double played people, they got double played by the Israelis. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, you probably got another. Someone else probably wants to jump in, but I got one last question about futurism and the parousia. What does Orthodoxy teach about the parousia? I know we don't know the time. We don't make speculative things, speculative theories about it. 7-year tribulation and all that stuff. But what about the nature of the actual return of Christ? Like, is it physical, or is it he returns in the new body, or like how does that work? I don't know what source I can use for that.
Well, you have to look at just the overall the Orthodox understanding of the end times. So the Orthodox emphasize strongly the resurrection of the body. And even though you're going to hear that a lot in Novus Ordo Mass, like nowadays they've been careful to bring that up a lot. Historically, a lot of Catholic theology kind of went focusing all on ADS and beatific vision stuff. And it's like, well, where does the resurrection even play into this? Like, what's the point of being resurrected if I'm getting this amazing beatific vision right now? But the Orthodox talk about the resurrection. So that will occur. Those two things are in tandem, like the end times and so on. That's going to be in tandem with the resurrection soon to follow. So that's the idea of the eschaton. But they're not going to speculate like, hey, it's going to happen after the Turks and the Russians go to war. It's nothing like that.
So Jesus returns physically to Israel, or he returns to the whole world? I don't know how that happens. Like it's the resurrection, and Christ is the first fruits of that resurrection. So he returns physically, the same way that he left. He returns physically.
Yeah, that's what the Book of Revelation says. Like he returns to the earth. It doesn't have to mean he goes and decapitates somebody in the third temple. That's kind of more the Islamic thing, like duel between the Islamic Isa versus the Dajjal. We don't have that concept.
Gotcha. Okay, to contrast that. Gotcha.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
On in. All right, it is finally time. The one, the only, the Autobot has assembled.
Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Usually I'm first, but because it took me a long time to get to Northern Ontario today, I'm having to go last. But hey, so one thing Nick asked in chat is the state of Shiaism right now, and I think it's very relevant to what's happening in Palestine and the Holy Land, because Shia militant groups, interestingly, were very pro-Hamas, despite Hamas being pro-Sunni, obviously. And for a while, Iran was, showing itself as the vanguard of Palestinian liberation and trying to say, look at all these Gulf Arab countries that don't care about the poor Palestinians. We're like their actual sponsors, we're their actual saviors. And now within the last 2 years, Hezbollah has gone down the drain, Iran has gone down the drain, Assad has gone down the drain, even though, as stated, Alawis are not exactly Shias one-to-one. And the Houthis aren't doing so well either. Therefore, I think the Sunnis have benefited, but it's another kind of Sunni Islam that's benefited from all this conflict in the Holy Land. Whereas 25 years prior, we would think of Sunni Muslims in terms of hardcore radical Gulf monarchy states, or Al-Qaeda, or the Taliban, or Daesh, or whatnot. Now it's more Mohammed bin Salman and just effectively trying to create a simultaneously traditional but also modern country, but modern in the sense that it's economically modern. The people are still going to wear traditional clothing and whatnot, and I feel this is the direction a lot of Sunni Muslims now want to go in, especially after they were either killed when they were fighting in the militant groups, or they've just rejected these militant groups outright. And now that the Shias have taken a lot of L's in the last few years, I do think the Shias are going to be a bit more second fiddle to the Sunnis now, because the Sunnis are going in a more, I think they're trying to rebrand themselves, but they're trying to say, look, we're going to put a pause on all this, radical Islamist things we've been doing. And, many Sunni Gulf monarchy countries, they're not too thrilled about the Muslim Brotherhood. I think a lot of them might actually despise Hamas deep down because they see those militant groups as threats to their own power. And therefore, I think this represents a big obstacle to Shiaism, because while the Shias aren't, I guess you can say, as divided right now, they're not really much in a position to do anything.
Right. Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you. You know, this is a picture of Hamid bin Salman with Ahmad al-Shara or Jolani or the Jej al-Kentucky, whatever he wants to call himself. And he has now met with bin Salman, and he said, I'm bringing the Saudi 2030 vision to Syria. So that's a pretty big deal, the fact that he said that. That's a pretty big deal. So the 2030 vision is basically MBS saying we're going to be modern. The thing is that people don't understand. They think that means twerking on TikTok. And as
No.
you said, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be basically, it's almost like time travel. It's like you take all these people from like the 12th century. They still have very conservative understanding of society for the most part. There's some parts that are not anymore. And then they just time travel to the 2020s. They have Netflix and TV, but there was no period of like 4 centuries of the Enlightenment that brought them up to that. So like where Westerners have all this Enlightenment morality, the Saudis and others don't. Like they just went from like, we have traditional Islam. Now we have traditional Islam with modern technology. We're going to find a way to make that work. So I think that you're correct. The age of the crazy groups is probably dying down. Like ISIS only came about because of the fall of Iraq. If there was no fall of Iraq and there was no Syrian civil war, there never would have been an ISIS. If
Yeah.
Syria and Iraq were both stable, even if they were poor, dumpy countries, if they were stable, poor, dumpy countries, there never would have been an ISIS. Like it's because the Shia and the U.S. troops destroyed the Sunni hegemony in Iraq. Then they paired up with the Sunnis who were disenfranchised, so to speak, from Syria. And so these two areas overlap on the map anyway, and that's where ISIS came from. But now it's like you said, it's just more like we're going to make the Middle East rich. And I think Syria was the second to last piece in the puzzle. I think they're doing what they want to do in Syria. It might take a little while. There's still fanatics and stuff roaming around. But in the next decade or so, Syria will become hopefully a more impressive country. And then the final piece of the puzzle is Palestine. And then they can begin their little plan for reshaping the Middle East.
Yeah, and I think it's best summed up with this picture. We have Mohammed bin Salman in traditional clothing, traditional Arab Islamic dress, but in the background you have this very modern, I'm gonna guess, high-end building or whatnot. That's what I feel the Sunnis want to do now, especially because I think when Saudi was a bit more, I guess you can say, fanatical with, you know, the Islamic religious beliefs, I always had this idea that the king, the emir, he sees those religious beliefs as this annoying person constantly whispering in his ear to do this, do that, and he's just looking for an excuse to get rid of him, because he says, you know, I'm already a traditionalist Muslim. This guy is just a radical fanatic who's just raging at the world. He's undisciplined and whatnot. And I feel this kind of traditional Islam that the Gulf wants to promote right now would also be beneficial for a lot of Christians in the Middle East, because that's much better than having crazy groups going around shooting everyone. And Turkey has had a very terrible track record with Christians in the Middle East, whereas the Gulf Sunni monarchs, they're thinking, yes, we don't care so much about having an indigenous Christian population, but we're more than happy to do business with Christian Middle Easterners, and we'd appreciate it if our brethren wouldn't go around acting crazy and making us look bad and disrupting our economic plans. You're the kind of person that, you know, perhaps even the Prophet would have put down as just a lost cause. You know what I mean?
Right. And to respond to this comment, Syria will probably be an Islamist regime now, he says, like what the Ikhwan wants. Turkey and Qatar are Ikhwan supporters. I disagree with that because I don't think Turkey is the benefactor here. Like they supported HTS for a long time, but I think they're failing in terms of influence. I think they only have influence in the north. The Saudis are definitely the big winners. And as Two Crooks said, that may or may not be a good thing. You know, definitely better than Turkish influence, but it may end up being something good if they stick to their plan. So like the Saudis are still going to be a conservative people, but they're not going to be all about, you know, bombing everybody and blowing things up. They just want to be about, hey, we don't want crazy liberalism, but, you know, we have to have an austere but successful society. So,
right.
Yeah.
And if I want to go back to the Holy Land, one thing that I want to bring up that I put in a comment is Ned Flanders Christianity has been a complete disaster for Christians within the Middle East, because I feel a lot of brains would break if you were to ask these types of Christians in the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, in this New World area, okay, what are the Palestinian Christians supposed to do? And they would just probably shut down. They don't even consider them in the equation. And I actually do feel there are a lot of Israeli nationalist groups that want to downplay the existence of Palestinian Christians, because any form of nuance would go down the drain if they just see it as, oh, they're all fanatical Sunni Muslims. They don't pay attention to the divisions within Islam, within different ethnic groups that tend to practice Islam. And again, Palestinian
Can I
Christian.
show you something really cool? You're gonna freak out, dude. You
Sure.
know how the Simpsons are always like predicting the future?
Yeah.
Well, how come in this old episode of The Simpsons, they got the flag of the Free Syrian Army?
Yeah, Allah. What is this? Oh, wait, I think I know that episode. I think it's when Bart decides to join a boy band, and this is part of a music video, and that's supposed to be Iraq.
Yeah. It's the episode, but
No.
it's literally the Free Syrian Army. Like, it's over, guys. It's over. Like forget MBS. It's Homer Simpson Plan 2030 for the Middle East.
That would actually be an improvement over what we could do on a normal day in the Middle East, I mean, you think Homer Simpson would be a worse president in Lebanon than the last few we've had?
It's crazy. Speaking of, Netanyahu recently today, he said they're not going to allow any Syrian army south of Damascus, and they're going to protect the Druze, which I think is probably just cover for they want to annex southern Syria. I don't know. Yeah. It could happen.
It's actually pretty funny you mentioned that, because Druze are very divided as well. You have the more Zionist Druze that live in Israel. They think they've gotten a good deal. There might be some sympathizers in Lebanon and Syria, but you also have these Druze in Lebanon, like my best friend growing up and some other friends. They're very extremely anti-Israel, and they tend to support a lot of these liberation organizations. So I don't know. It would be pretty interesting to see not like a Druze civil war, but a whole-on conflict between them. And it's not going to be about religion, guys. They still don't know what their religion is about. It's just an ethnic marker at this point.
Yeah. Last one, Super Lion. I just want to answer this because I do have to get going. But sure. Let's pull up. Man, it's been a while since I looked at Romans 11. I think someone else mentioned Romans 11. Has God cast away his people? Certainly not, for I am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. Well, I'm familiar with this chapter. I don't even think I need to read the rest of it to tell you that verse that St. Paul he's right there, that passage. He's saying God's people are not abandoned, meaning the Israelites. But that's because St. Paul became a Christian.
Yeah.
The whole point is like, I am Israelite, but I'm Christian. That's his whole argument here. He's not saying, oh, will God abandon his people? Certainly not. And then he references some rabbinic guy that hates Christ. He's not mentioning that. He's specifically talking about who's going to be part of the covenant. It says God has not cast away his people whom he foreknew. So he knows ahead of time, obviously, who's going to be with him or against him. And so he's not casting away the whole of the Jewish race, obviously, because some people are going to turn to Christ. If everyone thinks, oh, it's just stuff from 1,000 years ago, Alfred Edersheim, he was a massively successful Messianic Jewish writer. He was born Ashkenazi rabbinic, became like a Messianic, and he's a scholar of biblical Hebrew. So yeah, we can read more of it, but I'm pretty sure I've read through most of it. This is all just going to be about the fact that Israel, meaning the church and also ethnic Israelites, are not totally forsaken. They have a chance in Christ. Everybody does. So he's saying you're not forsaken if you're an Israelite just because the Israelites, meaning the Pharisees, rejected Christ. You still have a chance. We have another one here. Some Zionists say the Palestinian ethnicity is fake tube, it's Copelarp, and those Arabs are just Syrian or Jordanian or Gulf. What do you think? Well, that's the thing. Like, okay, if you say Jordanian, I can't really argue with that because Jordanians are not. It depends. All right, Jordanians who live in the cities are the same race as Palestinians, and Jordanians and Palestinians are the same race as Syrians and Lebanese. It's not a totally different ethnicity. However, Syrians who live in the desert in the east come from Bedouin tribes, and Jordanians who live in the desert in the south and the east also come from Bedouin tribes. So there are people in Jordan and Syria who literally are from Arabia, but then there's people who are just native Levant people.
Yeah, Jim, this actually goes very well into the last statement that was brought up, because a lot of those Palestinians are descended from those ancient Israelites who converted to Christianity. They don't have a reason to speak Hebrew anymore. They don't have that as their liturgical language. And after their flirtation with Aramaic, they're now speaking Arabic and they're now Palestinians. So that's where a lot of Palestinian Christian identity comes from. Yeah, God didn't forsake their people. A lot of them converted to Christianity, and now a bunch of them are Palestinian Christians. So what more can I say, right?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, if you're asking, is there a unique Palestinian DNA that is like an alien DNA that's so different from Jordanians and Syrians and Lebanese? No, they're going to cluster very close to all of us. But they're going to be, if you go really, really deep, they'll be slightly different because their heritage is going to be from those towns, not the towns in Lebanon. But overall, are they the same people as other Levant people? Yeah, but I don't understand how that's like a win for the Zionists. It just proves that the whole Levant is one region. And so that's it. Like, they're not from Saudi Arabia. So there you go. That's about it. All right, guys. Sorry if I didn't answer all the questions. I got to head for now. Crooks, thank you much for calling in. And Luke, thanks for that last minute super chat. So thank you very much. That's about it. I don't want to, I kind of think I've put this one to bed. I want to discuss evangelicals and stuff anymore. We've done it a million times. Let me pull up the Old Faithful, and that'll be it. So check out my Substack articles and maybe join the Saudi 2030 vision.
Freakiness is a part of life. Original Baramongan along with the two bad, wicked youths of rap. God of mercy, whoa. Yeah.
What's the business? Talk paper when I'm riding by. They know it's drizzle, he the truth off the east side. I know who ain't got my money because they ducking high. I grind for me and mines, I got the green light. I got to get it how I live it, that means front line. I got 2 zips, I got that salt.